Okay, so we've switched to the human models at this point, and we're going to start with the red leg model, and then I'm going to move that out of the way and we'll switch to the orange leg. And the reason we're starting with the red leg, it looks a little shabby because it's had a lot of love over the years, but the reason we're starting with this is because this is the only model, yes, I did say this is the only model where you can see the iliopsoas and its two component muscles. Okay, so we'll start with the component muscles. Okay, and this one you can see right here is the psoas major muscle. Beautiful muscle. And this one here is the iliacus muscle. Okay, so the two of these together are what give us the origins for the iliopsoas. Okay, and so it has a pretty broad set of origins because it's considering actually two muscles. Okay, so we have the iliac fossa, the iliac crest, the lateral sacrum, which you really can't see too much here, and then the transverse processes, bodies, and intervertebral discs of T12 through L5. Okay, so one set of origins associated with the iliacus, those associated with the ilium and the sacrum, and then another set associated with the psoas major. Okay, those associated with the vertebrae. Okay, and then these two muscles kind of fuse together as they go past the inguinal ligament, which is right here. And so what we see on the other side of the inguinal ligament, on the leg side, is the iliopsoas muscle. Okay, and this is the side where we're coming to the insertion of this muscle on the lesser trochanter. Okay, and this muscle is our prime mover for flexion at the hip. Okay, so it's very, very important muscle. Okay, so we're going to move the red leg out of the way. And we're going to switch in one of our orange legs. We're going to come over here. And the first muscle we're going to look at here is this muscle. It's thin strap-like muscle, which is the sartorius. Okay, and the sartorius, remember it was very broad in the cat and covered the quads completely. You can see that that's not the case in the human. Here are the quads in all their glory. Okay, and so the sartorius is much thinner and really has that kind of strap-like look to it. Okay, its origin is from the anterior superior iliac spine. Its insertion is on the medial aspect of the proximal tibia. Okay, so it crosses two joints, so it can act at both the hip and the knee, and it actually flexes both of those joints, and it helps with abduction, and it also laterally rotates at the hip. Okay, so this would be the kind of muscle you would want to use if you were going to sit down in a cross-legged position, because you'd be flexing and laterally rotating and abducting at the hip all at the same time, and then you'd be flexing at the knees. It would help you get into that cross-legged sitting position, the way you might sit on the floor, for example. Okay, we'll stay over on this view to look at one of our adductor muscles. Okay, we'll actually look at the whole set. Okay, right here we have the gracilis. Again, you can see it's much less broad in the human than it was in the cat. You can see the adductor muscles past it. Okay, this muscle here is the adductor longus. Okay, and this muscle here extending down into this area is the adductor magnus muscle. Okay, and that is the largest of the adductor muscles. The adductor magnus muscle has origins from the ischial tuberosity and pubis. It inserts on the linea aspera and the adductor tubercle of the femur. Okay, so remember adductor tubercle, adductor magnus. Okay, and this is our prime mover for adduction at the hip. So all of these muscles have adductor in the name because they're involved in adduction. Okay, it's also going to help with medial rotation and flexion of the hip. Okay. Okay, let's move over to the quadriceps group. We talked about them a little bit before. Okay, so here's the quads. We have 3 of the quads easily visible. The one in the middle here is the rectus femoris. And then the one that's here on the pinky toe side is the vastus lateralis. And as we turn a little bit, you can see how the vastus lateralis, it has a fairly large muscle. It's underneath part of this fascia latae. Okay, so this whole thing here would be the vastus lateralis. As we turn back, we have the vastus medialis here. Okay, now quad means 4, so there has to be one more. So we're going to remove the rectus femoris, and we're going to see that we have a 4th muscle, the vastus intermedius, which is here deep to the rectus femoris. Okay, now as a group, the quadriceps muscles are prime movers for extension at the knee. Okay, so that's all of them working together. Now the rectus femoris is the only one of the 4 quad muscles that actually crosses 2 joints. Okay, it has its origins from the anterior inferior iliac spine and the edge of the acetabulum. It inserts along with all of the other quads on the tibial tuberosity. Okay, so in addition to extending the knee, the rectus femoris is also a synergist to the iliopsoas for flexion at the hip. Okay, now the vastus lateralis, if we look at that one for a moment, okay, its origins are from the greater trochanter and linea aspera of the femur. Its insertion, again, along with the other quads, is at the tibial tuberosity. Okay, so since this one only crosses the knee joint, its only action really is extension at the knee, and that will be true for the other members of the quads as well. The rectus femoris is the only one that can also act at the hip. Okay. In this area, we also have another important muscle. That's this one here. This is the tensor, excuse me, the tensor fascia latae muscle. Okay, and this muscle, when it contracts, pulls on this connective tissue sheath here, which is the actual fascia latae. So this is the tensor of the fascia latae. That's how it got its name. Okay, now this muscle has origins from the iliac crest and the anterior superior iliac spine. Its insertion is the iliotibial tract, which is the other name for this connective tissue structure. And this actually eventually attaches to the lateral knee. Okay, so this actually gives you the ability to help with abduction at the hip, and it also helps you to steady the pelvis and the trunk in general. Okay. Let's go over to the posterior side now. And we have very prominent muscle that makes up most of the buttocks region. This is the gluteus maximus. Okay, the gluteus maximus has kind of a shape the same way the pectoralis major did, so it's got a broad set of origins and then a more specific insertion. Okay, so its origins are primarily from the dorsal or posterior ilium, from the sacrum and the coccyx. Okay, and then its insertion, which probably won't be a surprise to you, is the gluteal tuberosity. Okay, so that has a direct attachment there. Okay, and this is a very important muscle. In fact, it's the prime mover for for hip extension. Okay, and this is especially important in situations where you have your hip flexed and you're straightening it to, like if you're walking up a set of stairs. So that's why if people want their glutes to look good, they do a lot of Stairmaster work, okay, because that movement is really using that muscle very well. Okay, now if we remove the gluteus maximus, which obviously it does not want to be removed. Come on now. There we go. We can see another of the gluteal muscles here, which is the gluteus medius. Okay, now the gluteus medius has its origins from the superolateral ilium, and it inserts on the greater trochanter of the femur. Okay, and this is an important muscle. In fact, it's the prime mover for hip abduction. Okay, so this is our most important muscle for abduction at the hip. Okay, we're going to swing around to the posterior side now of the thigh, and here's where we have our rival gang that's always working against the quadriceps muscle group. This is the hamstring group. Okay, now the hamstring group has 3 members. The lateral muscle is the biceps femoris. The 2 medial muscles are the semitendinosus and the semimembranosus. Okay, now from this view, the way the model is depicted, you can mostly see the semitendinosus. If we take this piece out and turn it over, then you can see all of the semimembranosus in its glory. Okay, so when the muscle is in place on the model, there's only one little section of the semimembranosus that's really visible here. Okay, so biceps femoris, semitendinosus, semimembranosus. Okay, the biceps femoris has 2 heads, which is where biceps comes from, as you remember from biceps brachii. The long head has its origins from the ischial tuberosity, and the short head from the linea aspera. The insertion of the biceps femoris is on the head of the fibula and the lateral condyle of the tibia. Okay, so we're able to act at both the hip and the knee with this group. Okay, we'll see also the semimembranosus, which is the deeper of the 2 muscles, has its origins from the ischial tuberosity, and since it's medial, its insertions are on the medial condyle of the tibia and femur. Okay, so both of these muscles are going to be important for extending the hip, so they'll be synergist to the gluteus maximus at the hip, and they'll be prime movers really for flexion at the knee. Okay, so it's in that action where they're opposing the quadriceps group. Okay, we're going to move down to the calf region. This beautiful muscle that we can see here that has these 2 sections is the gastrocnemius. The gastrocnemius has its origins from the medial and lateral condyles of the femur. It inserts via the calcaneal tendon on the calcaneus. Okay, and it is the prime mover for plantar flexion. It is assisted in this movement by this muscle that you see kind of on the edge of the gastrocnemius, and this is the soleus. Okay, and you can also see the soleus if we rotate the model this way on the edge of the gastrocnemius on the other side as well. Okay, so the soleus is a synergist to the gastrocnemius in the action of plantar flexion. Okay, so we move here to this lateral area of the leg, we have the two fibularis muscles. Okay, the fibularis longus is here, and here's its tendon. This muscle is kind of hiding behind the tendon of the fibularis longus is the fibularis brevis. Okay, and the fibularis longus has its origins from the proximal fibula. Its insertion is in the first metatarsal and the medial cuneiform bone. Okay, and its actions are, it's primarily involved in eversion of the foot, but it also assists as a synergist to the gastrocnemius with plantar flexion. Okay, if we move around here, we have the extensor digitorum longus. Okay, and you can see how the tendon of this muscle comes down and fans out to go to all of the toes except for the great toe. Okay, so when you contract this muscle, that would cause the toes to draw away from the floor in an extended position. Okay, and then last but not least, we have this muscle here right next to the tibia, which is the tibialis anterior. Okay, now the tibialis anterior has its origins from the proximal tibia, and it inserts on the inferior surface of the medial cuneiform and metatarsal 1. Okay, and its action is that it's the prime mover for dorsiflexion. Okay, so it is the antagonist to the gastrocnemius because they're producing the opposite action. Okay, as we see the tibia here, remember this muscle is next to the tibia and it's the most anterior tibialis anterior muscle. Okay, over on the other side of the tibia we have our last muscle. This is the flexor digitorum longus. Okay, so this muscle, you can see there's a tendon that's moving through this opening here. It's going to go down on the plantar surface and divide up into individual components. Okay, and those are going to be important for flexing the toes, and that would be assisting the gastrocnemius, acting as a synergist to the gastrocnemius in plantar flexion.